Welcome to Drake High School's CETUS podcast, where we focus on informing our listeners about environmental issues and how they can help. My name is Logan Smith, and I will be your host. Today, we will be discussing fracking and its impact on the environment. Let's welcome our guest speakers, Melton, Apryl Frye, and Freund. Thank you for joining us today. First off, why don't we just start off by you telling us a bit about fracking?
All right. So hydraulic fracking is a technique designed to recover natural gas and oil from shale and other forms of tight rock. In this impermeable rock formations that lock in oil and gas and make fossil fuel production difficult. Large quantities of water, chemicals, and sand are blasted into these formations at pressures high enough to crack the rock, allowing the once trapped gas and oil to flow to the surface. The term fracking refers to how the rock is fractured apart by the high-pressure mixture. Technically, fracking isn't new, as companies have been using this technique for decades to extract oil and gas from rock formations. However, it's become more widespread in the recent years.
That sounds like a tedious process to go oil and gas. Why is fracking used over other ways to get oil and other energy sources? Why do we use fracking?
Right. Well, fracking allows the United States to get oil and natural gas rather than just importing it from other countries. So this means that the United States has a reduced reliance on imports, and this increases domestic oil production, which has driven down gas prices. And some argue that fracking has also helped to create jobs and boost manufacturing. Using oil and natural gas is also a cleaner way to produce energy, as it helps reduce the amount of coal used. However, just because this is all true, it does not necessarily mean that fracking should continue. In fact, while fracking does have its benefits, it has very harmful impacts on the environment.
So what you're saying is that the benefits of fracking don't outweigh the costs?
Yes, exactly.
So what's so bad about fracking then?
Fracking actually has a lot of negative effects. One of the biggest reasons why we should put a stop to fracking is because of all the pollutants and chemicals it releases. One of the steps of fracking includes blasting chemicals at rock formations. However, the majority of those chemicals used are simply unknown. Some of the chemicals may be carcinogenic, and they can escape during the drilling process, contaminating drinking water. Fracking also can lead to air pollution. One of the main pollutants released as a result of fracking is methane, which is a major greenhouse gas. There's been research from Cornell that suggests that leaked methane essentially wipes out any of the greenhouse gas benefits of natural gas, using that over coal. In fact, the belief that fracking is a greener way to get energy sources will promote the use of natural gas, which undercuts incentives to invest in solar, wind, and other renewable sources of energy. Fracking is also able to be done at a huge cost to water. Fracking fluid, which is used to cause fractures in the rock, allows access to the oil or gas, and is made up of as much as 97% water, oftentimes fresh water, which humans need to drink. Up to 16 million gallons of water may be used to frack a single well, and that water is then too contaminated to return to its source. So it's usually disposed of deep underground, effectively removing it from the freshwater cycle. Disposing of water underground can also contaminate underground water supplies. Once a pollutant contaminates groundwater, it fills the aquifer's porous layers of sand, gravel, and bedrock. This makes removal of the contaminant difficult and costly. The slowly flowing groundwater disperses the pollutant, and if it reaches a well used to extract groundwater, the toxic pollutants can get into drinking water and into water that is used to irrigate crops. Without strict monitoring and enforcement of pollution regulations, which at this point do not really exist, fracking could become a serious groundwater pollution threat.
Mimi is right. Not only is fracking bad because of how it uses and pollutes so much water, it also harms those living near it. There are major health concerns for the people that live nearby to where the fracking is occurring. A lot of additional components released at well sites can lead to health problems like irritation of the eyes, nose, mouth, and throat. Local air pollution can aggravate asthma and other respiratory conditions. Not only this, but fracking is disruptive to the lives of those near it. As well, pads, access roads, and pipelines are often accompanied by intense round-the-clock noise, lights, and truck traffic.
Wow. So sounds like fracking is pretty bad for people. I mean, if it has so many bad side effects, why do people still do it?
That is a good question. The fracking industry remains seriously underregulated, which is how it gets away with a lot. For example, many of the chemicals used in fracking are unknown. This is because while many states require disclosure of chemicals used in fracking, they often include exclusions for confidential business information, which can be used to shield the identities of chemicals that are considered trade secrets or chemicals that are potentially harmful. And although there are at least 10 federal acts addressing fracking, regulation is vague and enforcement is virtually non-existent. Advocates for fracking, often the companies that gain money from it, work towards finding loopholes to allow fracking. The Safe Drinking Water Act, for example, regulates the underground injection of fluids to protect underground sources of water. However, it was made clear that the regulation excluded the underground injections of fluids for hydraulic fracturing operations.
So what can we as citizens do to prevent fracking from happening?
Some people have known about the harms of fracking for a while now and are working toward ending it. There are simple ways, like signing petitions or writing letters to your local governor, but sometimes working with just the local level can help too. Local governments have broad power to protect public health and welfare, so they can use zoning and land ordinances as a method of prohibiting fracking, either temporarily or permanently. There's also something called the public trust doctrine. The principle is that lands and resources must be protected for the people. Even the Supreme Court appeared to endorse that doctrine, though not directly, in a past court case involving a railroad company and its desire to own property that the public retained interest in. After that, the public trust doctrine was employed to protect public access to waterways, including protecting our common water resources. As of now, there is some legislation happening in the US working toward banning fracking. Bernie Sanders proposed a bill called the Fracking Ban Act, which proposed to ban the practice of hydraulic fracking. Some states are fighting against fracking too. In California, applications for fracking projects now have to be reviewed by scientists, and in the future, new oil and gas regulations will be developed, making fracking harder to be done and therefore lowering the usage of it. And I'll leave it at that hopeful note.
Well, thank you all so much for joining us today. I would like to give a big thank you to all of our guest speakers for helping us today and helping us learn more about fracking. Thanks to Kai Melton, Apryl Frye, and Mimi Friend. And be sure to join in our other podcasts discussing environmental issues and water quality. So thank you all.